Maharishi's Global Family Chat. News of rising invincibility around the world. This is the news everyone needs to understand how the trends of time are changing towards peace and prosperity. Maharishi's Vedic technologies, Transcendental Meditation and its advanced program Yogic Flying are being implemented globally. Just the square root of 1% of the population practicing yogic flying together in a group is enough to raise the levels of harmony and coherence in the collective consciousness for the whole population. Enjoy the news of enlightenment dawning for every individual, invincibility for every nation, and peace for our dear world. Jai Gurudev, welcome to Maharishi's Global Family Chat. Today is Friday, the 30th of September, 2016. This evening, we have another peep into the area of EEG and enlightenment. And this will be presented by Dr. Arenander, who, together with his wife Cynthia, has been teaching the course on EEG and enlightenment. To train governors of the age of enlightenment, how to present the structure and activity of the brain and the corresponding changes in the experience of consciousness. How brain patterns change as consciousness rises with the growth of higher states of consciousness. What happens in the brain when we transcend? This is a vital area of research and a vital area to show people the significance of transcending and of transcendental meditation. So it's a great joy now to welcome Dr. Arenander, and please go ahead and inspire us all with your experience of teaching EEG and enlightenment in this summer. Welcome, Dr. Alaric, and please go ahead.
Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. Thank you, Dr. Swan, for that introduction. It was very sweet and very kind of you. It's a joy to be back with the global family and to tell them about our course we had this last summer, our third annual course on EEG, becoming an exponent of EEG and enlightenment. So if we can, appreciate it if Meru Broadcast would add the first slide. So becoming an exponent of EEG and enlightenment. This is a report of our third annual course given after Guru Purnima 2016. Maharishi is fond of saying that the brain is material and that consciousness is non-material. This is always a tricky thing for everybody to... Maharishi goes on to say, consciousness is materialized by the non-material activity of the material brain. Consciousness is materialized by the non-material activity of the material brain. Natural integration of the brain and consciousness structures life. This integration is at the basis of life. Life is integrated wholeness. Supremely refined brain activity projects wholeness of awareness, wholeness of life, wholeness of spiritual value. EEG, therefore, is a way to measure this state of integrated brain activity. EEG is a way to visualize totality, total brain functioning. And in our annual course, we find that modern science offers knowledge of brain physiology and the technology to record and analyze brain waves as a window to the functioning of how our minds work. This knowledge includes the analysis of the development of total brain functioning corresponding to the state of enlightenment. This course we've been offering now for 3 years and will continue to offer it. This course provides each participant a deeper understanding of their own brain and the mechanics of transcendental meditation and provides a foundation to accelerate personal growth and the ability to express this knowledge to friends, meditators, and the public. Next slide, we have a picture from our most recent course. Here's our happy course participants representing 11 countries. I think we're up to about 42 countries now have had representatives come and learn this great knowledge to bring back to their domains. So when a person comes on the course is about 9 days of celebration. And the first thing is we gain knowledge of how your brain works and how it functions and structures and how brain waves are generated. Then we learn about our brain networks, because our brain is just a whole set of networks associated with attention and different states of cognitive processing and meditative experience. We also learn how to record and display brainwaves to see the dynamics of how the brain functions and see your own EEG. Now, it's not necessary that you think you have to buy an EEG machine or actually do it as a demonstration, but by having this knowledge, you'll feel much more comfortable, not only in your own experience, but in expressing it in lectures you may give. We also understand how to analyze and properly interpret brainwave patterns and understand brain dynamics in the context of Maharishi's Vedic science. We definitely include all of Maharishi's understanding of science and consciousness and help us understand in a much simpler and a faster way the complications of brain dynamics. We also review 50 years of EEG research on TM and examine the neuroplasticity as different modes of brain functioning during meditation. And then finally, each course person gets a very extensive syllabus and thorough lecture handouts. Each participant goes home with 30 full PowerPoint presentations, one we've used successfully over the last 15, 20 years, and receive many, many videos to use as they wish. So I want to show you one of those videos Dr. Cynthia made. There's a number of different versions, and they're available online on a YouTube channel. And we're going to watch that video now, and then we'll come back and continue this presentation as a chat. So here's an example of a brain mapping video available to all online, one of many.
How do we optimize human potential? We see that the development of science and technology has aided civilization in discovering and understanding the nature of life.
My name is Dr. Alaric Arenander, and through all these decades of brain research, I've enjoyed doing research myself and reading the research literature, especially in the areas of brain, consciousness, and the application of meditation. And I have to tell you that in all these years, it's becoming clearer and clearer. It was actually quite clear about 40 years ago, but every year it gets clearer and clearer from the research published and people's experience around the world, that the human potential can actually be easily tapped into. The human brain, in its immense complexity, is actually available through very simple and effortless techniques that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, his Vedic science, have offered to everybody in the world. These research-based techniques, ancient techniques, allow any individual to access, develop, and utilize the full potential of their birthright, which is this brain of incredible complexity and cosmic proportions. So, from a neuroscience perspective, there are many techniques, there are many ways to train the brain to do different things. And as you've seen over the centuries, we've made little progress. But now in the last 50 years, with the availability of TM around the world, it's very clear that TM is by far the most effective, the simplest, and the most enjoyable form of meditation to develop the full potential in every individual to gain a state of enlightenment.
We are going to now look into brain activity and conscious experience. In the late 1700s, electrical currents in the brain were discovered. This discovery laid the foundation of modern neurophysiology. Let's hear from Dr. Arenander, and then we will be visualizing these electrical currents with the use of EEG, which records the electrical activity produced by the billions of cells in the brain.
In neuroscience, there's always the desire to fathom the mechanics of brain functioning. It is so vastly complex with 100 billion neurons. In one little grain, there are 1 billion contacts. There are 2 miles of fibers and 100,000 neurons. It's just a little tiny grain. And then we have this vast potential of a human brain. And in neuroscience, how do we begin to fathom that? And what technologies can we use to elicit the best output, the best expression of this potential? And we know now, after many, many decades, that the prefrontal cortex, this area right behind the forehead, right in here, that the prefrontal cortex seems to be the core, the key locus by which we organize our life, organize our thinking, behavior, and our consciousness. It is the center part of what it means to be a human being and to develop into an enlightened individual. And so we need technologies and we need research that demonstrate that we can affect this prefrontal cortex, develop its full potential so that the individual can thrive and develop its full potential and be part of an enlightened society.
This is a recording of live brainwave activity of a practitioner of Maharishi's Transcendental Meditation technique. There are a number of screens you're viewing right now as the EEG is being analyzed by the computer. I'm going to stop it for a second. And you notice that there are 4 main screens: the top screens, the 2 middle screens, and then the lower screen. The top screen is made up of 2 screens, the left front and the right front. These are the power spectrum from very slow frequencies to middle frequencies to very high frequencies in both cases. Low frequencies, middle frequencies, and high frequencies on both the left front and the right front. In the middle are 2 of the EEG tracings themselves, from the left front and from the right front. And they go across in time. The entire screen is about 1 minute, and so we've seen about 10-20 seconds already of EEG, and you can see they're a certain size and a certain pattern. And below that, in the last screen, the bottom screen, is what is called coherence. Coherence is a measure of the phase stability or correlation between 2 individual EEG signatures. For example, from the left side and the right side of the front of the brain. So the coherence, this chart at the bottom, the graph at the bottom, is the most important chart here because it's going to illustrate how the computer calculates the degree of coherence between different parts of the brain and therefore a measure of global EEG or brainwave coherence. And as you can see, before the person meditates, the coherence oscillates between the minimum of 0 and maximum of 100%. 0 and 100%. And this is seen as a normal oscillation or rhythm of having more and a little bit less and a little bit more as an individual processes information. In the middle of the screen, we're going to see at the beginning of the practice of Maharishi's Transcendental Meditation technique, a profound change. So let me continue then the recording of this live EEG. Now we have a continuation of the recording. And notice your attention on the size of these waves and the nature of the coherence. So the person has begun the TM technique. Notice the changes right away. Within about less than 1 second, the individual has been able to shift their entire brainwave activity from a very diversified, outward-oriented mode of functioning, I'm going to stop it, to a very unified and powerful, inward-oriented form of awareness or consciousness. And you can see that the beginning of TM was right here, and you can see that what is on the left side of the screen is profoundly different from what's on the right side of the screen. Notice, for example, that the EEG in both the left side and the right side and the front of the individual became quite large. Notice the size of the amplitude, and this is an indication of increased, rapidly increased
integration of cellular activity from a more diversified to a more unified, powerful structure of brain coherence. And that you can see on both the left and the right-hand side after the beginning of TM, where the marker is. You also see that at the same time point, right here, that at the same time point, the EEG coherence in the front of the brain, between the left and the right-hand side, the coherence also shifts dramatically from before to during the TM technique. And you can see that during the TM technique, the coherence now rises to a very high, a remarkably high level of global coherence, oscillating at around 90%, 95%, where before it was oscillating in a diversified mode across the entire range. This shows you how simple and easy, in this effortless, natural way, an individual can sit and close their eyes, and within less than a second or so, the brain shifts or switches from an outward-oriented to a very deeply rested, inner-oriented form of awareness, the simplest form of human awareness, an experience, a direct experience of one's own self. And in doing so, that deeply pleasurable and relaxing experience and level of the mind correlates with a very profound and remarkable change on the level of brainwave dynamics. And we can see it shifts from a diversified to a very unified local coherence and global coherence. Local and global coherence, which lie at the basis of all the many, many decades of research that's been published around the world, showing that individuals who practice this very simple form of meditation, transcendental meditation, experience within a very short period of time, and with increasing amounts over time, remarkable changes in every aspect of mind, body, health, feeling, and behavior.
To allow for a comparison, we will now be visualizing the average EEG of a non-practitioner of transcendental meditation.
Here is a brainwaves of an individual who's not meditating. On the top is the EEG trace of a single lead on the brain, and the bottom is the brainwave coherence between the left and right side of the human cortex. And you can see that it goes up and down. This is a natural accretion of the coherence increasing and decreasing, in this case between about 20 and 60%. This is what a world's population of non-meditators, they have a certain amount of coherence. And this certain amount of coherence reflects a certain level of brain potential and quality of thinking and behavior. So this is what we see with the non-meditator. Now what if we look after 2 months of meditation of this individual? What would that brain look like during transcendental meditation? You can see on the left, that individual was bouncing up and down, and then they start meditation and see immediately the change here. The change indicates, while they're continuing the meditation, that there's very high and sustained levels of EEG brainwave coherence. And we know that these levels of training the brain to order bring about great benefits to the individual in all aspects of their thinking, feeling, and physiology. So here is a simple example of what happens as you shift from before meditation to begin meditation. Again, this is the averaged level of coherence in an individual, which gives rise to an quote-unquote average life of happiness and success. We'd like to improve that latent potential, and we'd like to see that the left side of the front and the right side of the front are more coherent, that your executive control centers, in particular the prefrontal cortex in the front of the human brain, can be improved in its orderliness. And we can see why we're thinking about the prefrontal cortex, because the responsibilities of this frontal area are very fundamental. They're responsible for your sense of self, awareness and attention, values and your beliefs, your goals. The president is responsible for your creativity, decision-making, self-control, and habits. Here is a new screen, and this one is a little bit more complicated because it shows now 4 pairs of electrodes. We're going to look at the front, left and right. We're going to look at the sides on the left side and the right side, how the front of the brain communicates with the back of the brain. And the fourth one, we're going to look at the back parietal areas where we create our world. So in this graph then we have the coherence of the front of the brain, the back of the brain, the left side of the brain, and the right side, all 4, front, back, left, and right. And when they begin meditation, you can see on the left before meditation, and then everything goes up to very high sustained levels of coherence across the entire brain. This is what we refer to as total brain potential. And here's a continuing picture of meditation, and you can see that this is very different from before meditation, and it is also very, very different from the average coherence of the individual on this planet. So total brain functioning is what we want to accomplish, and the technology is available for everybody to increase the order of their brain and therefore automatically and effortlessly increase their brain potential. This effortless technology and simple technology allows the brain to realize its full creative potential.
Hoje, para nós, é dia muito especial. Hoje nós estamos tendo o privilégio de ter uma palestra não nacional, como a gente tem tido ao longo dos últimos anos, mas uma conferência internacional. Primeiro, eu gostaria de dizer que eu continuava com o nível de estresse. E na vida da gente, a gente precisa ter. Tem picos de estresse, porque todos nós vamos ter problema na vida, mas você tem que baixar novamente para que você espere outra situação que aconteça. Are we okay?
Yes.
Okay. So please.
So we just wanted to have you hear Rivka's experience with Transcendental Meditation, and then we'll start the live demonstration.
Bom dia. Eu comecei a meditar por uma indicação do meu dentista. Eu fui procurá-lo porque eu estava com um problema na articulação, procurei um especialista, um problema de mandíbula, acordava tensa e fui procurar esse dentista.
100%, então seria de mais ou menos 30 segundos. Então nós temos esse tempo aqui e a ordenação de máximo e mínimo. Então você pode ver que essas ondas cerebrais vão de cima para baixo. Isso é normal, nós temos uma percepção da sociedade. Então você gostaria de começar?
So what is she doing?
O que ela está fazendo? Ela está com os olhos fechados, é uma técnica bem importante. Ela está ouvindo, ela está me ouvindo. Não sei o que ela vai de volta para a sua meditação. Então é bem mais ordenado. Então dentro dessa ciência da meditação transcendental,
कॉन्टेक्स्ट इसी के माध्यम से होता है। अभी जो ध्यान में जो रेखाएं आप देख रहे हैं वो एक मस्तिष्क में जो संतुलन जो होता है, जो एक संबद्धता होता है, उसका वो प्रमाणित करता है। ये ध्यान के पहले किस प्रकार अपना मस्तिष्क का कार्य होता है और ध्यान के समय किस तरह के उसमें परिवर्तन। अभी वो ध्यान करना शुरू किया, अभी ध्यान कर रही है, तो इसमें आप वो अंतर देख लीजिए। ध्यान के पहले आप देखा था ये जो रेखाएं है ना, इसमें एक ऐसे खाली जगह था, एक संबद्धता नहीं था। जैसे वो ध्यान शुरू किया, वो देखिए उसका जो एम्पलीट्यूड है।
So having seen the immediate impact of this simple mental technique of transcendental meditation on brain orderliness, we're going to see how it's applied to the lives of many individuals throughout the world, normal individuals as well as individuals with problems of mental and physical health, people with depression or ADHD or PTSD. We're going to find it's this infusion of orderliness into the prefrontal cortex and hence into the whole brain that brings about automatically and in a simple way more orderliness in feeling, thinking, and behavior of any individual.
I used to say, I'm going to get my grades up, I'm going to do better. But yet it was just what I said. It never happened until I started meditating.
I think every barrio, ghetto school in America has to have the fundamental right of having an opportunity to do this type of thing.
The kids in the West Bank love it. The kids in Brazil love it. I think this is what people need. They don't need high-minded talk so much as results.
Speaking as a scientist, the amazing thing about transcendental meditation is the very well-established research showing that the technique impacts things that we didn't think were changeable.
Since I started TM, my sugar's been where it should be. So I'm sold on TM.
The initial research on the effects of transcendental meditation in treating PTSD offers so much hope, better than many things being tried at far less a cost.
Transcendental meditation saved my life. Today, I can say I am a meditator.
If you take out time and just meditate and just let everything go, free your mind, everything will come together.
Just this last month, I felt so much energy. It's been amazing. All that feeling of heaviness, I could feel it melt away. It was absolutely transformational.
I've found that there is an ever-present sanctuary within me.
People tell me, you look very calm, you look very relaxed. And there's not a whole lot of craziness. I'm just sitting there calm, and it's surprising even to me.
I have a lot of problems in my life. And Tim came into my life and gave me like this open door to something that I never knew it would be.
Those days I used to cry too much, but now even the tears are holding. I'm great.
It comes back to the core of who you are as a person and what you're made of, and you have to give yourself a chance.
Very pleased to have some brain-based peace technologies to generate harmony in the social order. These technologies over the last 30 years have been documented by modern scientific research across many institutions and many countries to bring about, through small groups of practitioners of Maharishi's programs, a wide range and a wave of increased positive growth and harmony in society. This is very great.
All around the world, groups of peace-creating experts are coming together to practice transcendental meditation and Maharishi's advanced programs. They are collectively generating a superwave of brain coherence. The brain-based approach to peace utilizes the human brain and all its possibilities to allow every nation to generate peace and harmony. In the vicinity of order and coherence, no negative tendencies arise. The brain-based approach to peace brings fulfillment to the age-old quest for world peace, and at the same time, it unlocks latent brain potential of the individual, which is the greatest resource of every nation.
In conclusion, we have seen that the human brain, in all its beautiful complexities, has these values of coherence and intelligence. We are in a position now, through transcendental meditation and all Maharishi's technologies of consciousness, to unlock the huge reservoirs of latent potential within each one of us, and make use of our cosmic supercomputer to bring our own individual life to enlightenment, invincibility to our nation, and peace to our dear world.
Great, so we appreciate and we hope you enjoyed that very much. I think it's a beautiful example of what videotapes are available and the knowledge that we can use to inspire not only our own life, but that of everybody around us. So again, the videos are available on a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Brain Potential Optimized. So feel free to go there and enjoy it, send the URL to your friends, or download it for your own lectures. In the next slide, we're going to start talking about total brain functioning. And the beginning of that is, next slide, is to understand brain organization. And of course, people are familiar now with the basic outline of how the brain is structured. Next. But we now have moved from 4 or 5 areas to many thousands of areas, each with a unique, diverse function, contributing to an overall holistic structure of total brain functioning. Next. And in this understanding of modern science, on the left is the wiring diagram as seen from a fMRI, and on the right is a diagram of that wiring diagram. And you can see there's different sized balls. These are hubs, just like you can consider the right-hand hub network as being an example of the, for example, aviation network around the world, where the big hubs are the big aviation centers like London and New York and San Francisco and Moscow and so forth. And then there are smaller, more regional airports, and then there are very local airports, and they're all connected together. And these brain networks, there's many of them. There's a visual network, and there's the skin network, there's a motor network, there's a salient network, a default network, and so forth. You have to know these things are working 24/7. They just don't pop up when you're trying to do a task or some sensory motor activity. They're there all the time. Waking, dreaming, sleeping, meditation, they're always there working in a certain configuration to give rise to your conscious awareness. And we're learning recently that there's a whole network. You can see this beautiful tree version of the brain. There's a circle there, and around the circle are all the different parts of the cerebral cortex. And those lines, the red, orange, and yellow lines, are just the main connections between the different areas. It's a very beautiful diagram of the network hierarchy. So we can see there are really 3 styles or hubs in the brain. There's a rich hub, which is the red. There's the feeder hubs, which are the orange. And then the yellow are the peripheral hubs. And the way to help explain this to you is just take a simple example of a flower that you're going to reach for. And the next slide summarizes this. And it's called brain chronoarchitecture. It's the brain. Chrono means time. Architecture means structure. So it's the structure of time and organization in the brain. And there are 3 levels. On the left, you can see the little red flower. And that information flows into the brain using the peripheral systems, let's say the visual system. And that's dominated by the gamma EEG, the gamma frequencies. That information is transferred via feeder systems, beta frequencies, into the rich hubs, which are dominated by alpha frequencies. Now, the rich hubs are the core, the essential nature of our brain, organizing all the diversity. This is the center of unification in the human brain, and it's based on the alpha frequency. And based on its organizing and integrative capability, it then passes to the right, in this diagram, to the feeder system, again beta, and then further on to the gamma system, the peripheral system, to move your hand. So you can see that from seeing a flower on the left to reaching for it on the right, you move from the peripheral back to the peripheral, and in between you have these feeder hubs bringing it all to the rich core of your brain. So you can see this hierarchy of more diverse, more different on the outside, and the most unified on the center, and they're all working together based on this alpha. In the next slide, we have a summary of this, where we have cross-frequency hubs. And you can see again, there's the rich hub, which are the slow frequencies. Then there's the feeder hubs, which are the middle frequencies, usually some of the alpha and then some of the beta. And then the peripheral hubs are the gamma. So again, this is really very flows into our understanding of Rishi, Devata, and Chundas, the structure of our awareness. And the next one summarizes Rich Club, this core element. The Rich Club integration is what segregates all the diverse information from our body and the environment on all this little detailed information. How's your liver doing, your stomach? How is the left part of your visual screen? What's going on in your hearing and so forth? It attracts all the long distance traffic together. It creates a distinctive flow and sends it back out for action, for results. It usually comes to the prefrontal cortex in particular. It collects it together, then spreads it out through the feeder networks, ACC here, and temporal cortex, and insular, so forth, out to all the motor activity and so forth. So again, the rich club is that center core of our life dominated by the alpha frequency. So the next slide reminds us of what these frequencies look like. If you take the raw EEG and you use the computer, you can divide it into delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. I think we're all familiar with these. And here's a 1-second screenshot, and you can see as you go from bottom to top, from delta to gamma, that the number of waves per second increases. This is how many cycles per second. And so basically, the next slide, we can see that the top ones are more local processing, and the bottom frequencies are more global processing. This is, again, local and global, how we integrate local and global to create a unified awareness and the growth towards enlightenment. So let's take this one more step. The next slide. We can stack up our frequencies. As you can see here, delta at the bottom, then theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. And you can see there's white boxes around them, stippled boxes. Now, we've been talking mainly in our movement and in the history of meditation and EEG in terms of alpha, beta, and gamma. We'll come back to this in a moment. But in the next slide, we'll see that we can actually assign them to Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. That the gamma puts together the objects, or the Chandas. The beta is that Devata organizing quality. And that the alpha is more that inner silencing activity that creates a platform for the Devata and Chandas. But you'll notice that we still haven't dealt with alpha, theta, and delta below. And the next slide we can say, here's the next set, where delta now can be considered the new Rishi, or the deeper or the more fundamental Rishi. Theta is the more fundamental Devata, and the slow alpha is the more fundamental Chandas. So alpha, therefore, represents both Chandas and Rishi. It's a Rishi for our concrete object referral experience, but it's a Chandas for that self-referral stroke of how our awareness functions. And we put all these together, we see our next slide, which is the standard C we see in practice of TM, where from the very diverse global integration of very complex ways, with TM we find things become very simple very quickly with high amplitude, which means high levels of local and global synchrony. So in the next slide we can summarize what we just covered, and that is that the brain is a hierarchical sea of rhythmic activity nested together to support our awareness. And that these various EEG frequencies underlie our conscious experience and help organize the process of transcending and the development of higher states of consciousness. So our next slide, let's move back into the EEG and look at it in terms of just alpha, beta, gamma, since that's where most of our research has been found. And here's the slide summarizing that these three frequency bands bring together and bring about cognitive experience, alpha, beta, and gamma. And you can see that alpha is relatively slow, beta is faster, more waves per second, and gamma is very fast activity. And this is necessary because in the next slide, each is responsible for a different aspect of cognitive functioning. You can see the alpha being slow is related more to the observer, or Rishi. On the other hand, gamma is very fast and therefore responsible and necessary to create the observed, or the object, or the Chandas. And in between, we have this Devata, or observing, functioning of the beta. So alpha, beta, gamma, the observer, observing, and observed. These are the components of experience. And if we put them back onto our EEG slide, we can see that there's alpha, beta, and gamma. And you can see the observer, process of observation, and the observed. If we put them onto our screens we've seen previously, and you saw in that beautiful video produced by Dr. Cynthia, in the next slide we see that we can have, if you like, 3 graphs of coherence. On the top we can have the alpha coherence in the front, in the middle we can have the beta coherence in the front, in the bottom we can have gamma coherence. Next slide. So therefore we'd be looking at the coherence related to the observer, alpha, observing beta, and observed gamma. And I give you a beautiful example of how this happens through Maharishi's technologies. Transcendental meditation is a way of very beautifully growing the potential of the human brain. In the next slide, we'll show you a 7-year sequential growth pattern looking at this broadband coherence. Broadband meaning we're looking at all the frequencies, or at least the alpha, beta, and gamma frequencies, and not just alpha frequency or beta and so forth. So let's look at all the coherences in the prefrontal cortex over 7 years. So let's start with the baseline. Somebody's been, in the next slide, somebody's already been meditating for about 10, 12 years. And you can see that the top box where the arrow is shows that it's very high alpha coherence of the prefrontal cortex. And the next two boxes are beta and gamma. The middle is beta and the bottom is gamma. And they're not bad. It's actually pretty high. So this person, this meditator, this siddha, is doing quite well. In the next slide, we see at 24 months after this first picture, at 24 months you can see what? Well, first of all, the prefrontal cortex remains high. And we'd expect that, and that's what we reported on. But I don't know if you've seen it, but these beta and the gamma start creeping up. They get higher and higher. And the next one, at 63 months, we definitely see that the beta and gamma are now moving upwards towards 100%, and that, as we would expect, the alpha remains at 100%. And then at 85 months, look how high all three coherences are in the prefrontal cortex: alpha, beta, and gamma. All three aspects of the components of experience. And here is this slide now, alpha global coherence. At that arrow, the red arrow, the person started transcendental meditation. So on the left, we have before meditation. And after the arrow, you can see there's a very big difference in EEG in the top two traces, and definitely in the lines below, which are the coherences. Now, before we had one line per area of the brain. We're looking at the prefrontal cortex. In this slide, we have 4 lines, different colors, that represent the front of the brain, the back of the brain, the left side of the brain, and the right side of the brain. And you can see that almost instantaneously on beginning TM, that all of these come together and ride at a very high, almost 100% most of the time. So this is an extraordinary thing, and this is an example of transcendental meditation, and only transcendental meditation. No other meditation has ever been shown to do this that we know about. In the next slide, we see this broad frequency. We can look at these same 4 lines across 4 frequencies. We have theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. You can see on the right. And each one of those strips has all 4 of those parts of the brain, front, back, left, and right. So on the top, we see theta very high during meditation across the whole brain. We see for alpha, during meditation, very high across the whole brain. Beta, not bad at all, and gamma also very high. Again, unique to transcendental meditation. Through transcending, we develop the total value of experience, of awareness, and therefore we would develop the total value of all the components, which is alpha, beta, and gamma, and also theta. In the next slide, we have another example. And here, see how remarkable these levels are during meditation? The theta is very high, and your alpha, beta, and gamma are also very, very high. There's another example. And again, very high across all 4 frequencies. Now, in my next slide, we're taking, and instead of having separate lines, we're going to just look now at the front and the back across all the frequencies. Let's say instead of looking at alpha, we look at frequencies of 4 times a second all the way up to 40. And we look at the front and the back up top, very high. In the middle, left and right. And the bottom is crisscross, which means the left front to the back right, so forth. In this slide, you see remarkably high levels. And this now is across all the frequencies. And this is what we found, and Fred and I, Dr. Travis and I, published almost 14 years ago. This is indicative of the growth to cosmic consciousness, this broadband coherence across the brain, in particular the prefrontal cortex. In the next slide, I want to show you something that our dear David Orm Johnson, Dr. Orm Johnson, published in 1981, where in the middle, the high peak of all those different parts of the brain, all the different coherence pairs, comes together in the middle during respiratory suspension. Again, one of the first examples of how broadband global coherence is related to transcending, and therefore, as we've also shown, related to the growth to enlightenment cosmic consciousness. So the next slide summarizes this, that we have all these frequencies. Over the last 50 years, we've predominantly looked at alpha, beta, and gamma for very good and obvious reasons. But now there's the opportunity to look at the slower frequencies, theta and delta, next, because these will help us understand more of the global phenomena, in the next slide, the global phenomena of how the brain constructs our awareness. In the last slide in this section, we see that the top three, alpha, beta, gamma, all relate to the structuring of object referral awareness, where the bottom three, delta, theta, and alpha, relate to the structuring of awareness ourselves, our self-referral structure. And although there isn't time or this graph to put in here, there's a third set nested below delta that actually there's another set below this. So there's really three sets that we know about in terms of structuring our awareness out of the fluctuations of the unified field. So in the next slide, we just spent a moment on neuroplasticity, getting close to the end here now. Neuroplasticity is something which has caught the imagination of not only science, because we didn't think the brain changed, but it does, and also the human public, because everybody liked to think that if they did something different, they would actually become different or better. So now we know, after the last 30 years of neuroplastic studies, that the brain is truly plastic. In other words, it changes to every experience. So every experience changes our brain. Whatever we juggle in our life, everything we do, every thought, every action changes the wiring of our brain every moment. And therefore, every meditation and every experience in meditation also changes our brain. This is exactly why we spend time meditating. And this is why we get the benefits from meditation. Now, recently, there's been enough research done that we can summarize neuroplasticity in the next slide as three modes. There is a more superficial content-specific, there's a more general process-specific, and then there's the global integrative. The content-specific is, for example, when you learn to ride the bicycle. You get a sensory motor skill, or you learn how to juggle balls in the air. It's a very useful skill. Or you learn how to write with a pen. You're writing an A, now you write the A again, now you write the A again. This is content-specific neuroplasticity. This is how you learn to ride the bicycle. This is how you learn to write a letter. The deeper, more comprehensive is called process-specific neuroplasticity. This is when you're using and developing and cultivating more global core processes like memory and your working memory and how you think and organize information and so forth. These are process-specific, more general, and they support content-specific. In other words, why am I juggling and how am I doing and so forth. But there is now considered a deeper, more fundamental type of neuroplasticity called global integrative. And let's just spend a moment, think about that in terms of our own experience in transcendental meditation. We see the bubble diagram, which you're used to. On the top, we have the line of awareness, and then the squiggly lines of the ocean of our awareness. And below that dotted line, we have the area which we're not usually familiar with, but which we transcend through, following the thought train or the mantra, back effortlessly to the self. So there's really the surface levels, the in a sense, unconscious or non-conscious areas of our mind normally, and then there's the level of the self. We can assign the different styles of neuroplastic activity to these bubble diagram, where if you're learning to write, you're basically on the surface dealing with the environment and therefore content specific. And of course, this is very important. We need to be able to drive the car carefully and so forth. Deeper processes which underline these content specific are called process specific, and they're also very important, and they're used in our educational process and so forth. Now, all these things happen in a sense spontaneously throughout life because this is how the brain is structured. But we can begin to see that there are specific examples of these. And then finally, as we see in this slide, at the base we can assign global integrative to be that neuroplasticity that comes from transcending, from that self-referral experience. And we can assign the different meditative techniques and experience to the neuroplastic domains. If you're concentrating, focusing, if you're focusing your attention and so forth, then that is going to relegate you to the surface level of awareness, or even to the outside world if you're looking at a candle or staring at a tree or some such thing. More fundamental or more comprehensive forms of meditation, we can call them contemplative. They're passive, but they're still activity, still effort, and you're still dealing with the mind, you're still dealing with the body or the world around you. And these are contemplative or monitoring or mindfulness and so forth. But they still relegate you to the surface level of your bubble diagram, that is your mind. And so basically, what we find here is that we can assign the different types of meditation techniques, concentration, contemplation, and transcending, which are very well delineated in the research literature, very well delineated in terms of what they're attempting to do, and also in terms of the outcome and benefits. That by transcending and cultivating global integrative neuroplastic processes, we cultivate the most comprehensive, the most powerful, and the most dynamic range of brain activity. When I say brain activity, we have to remember that our brain is fluid. We see pictures of brain cells, we see little sparks here and there and so forth, but you have to remember that the wiring in the brain is changing all the time. All the wiring in our brain. It's estimated that within about a month, half of your wires have changed. Half of your synapse contacts have changed. And within a year, the other half have probably changed too. So at each moment of our life, there's a huge amount of reorganizing and rerouting, rewiring of our brains. And so every moment of our life is precious to develop our higher states of consciousness. So let's summarize this section then. We can see that every experience changes the brain. And neuroplastic processes can be seen functioning at various levels of integration. We said there was the content specific, and then the process specific, and then the global integrative. These different neuroplastic processes can be seen functioning in different educational and meditative techniques. The fundamental global integrative process is seen in the development of total brain functioning. So we can see then that each mode of conscious experience is supported by and impacts distinct modes of brain functioning. The experience of transcending as we know it is supported by the effortless formation of global EEG coherence. Repeated transcending, training the brain to be effortless in self-referral. Repeated transcending leads to experience-dependent change in the brain and supports the development of higher states of consciousness, all published in the scientific research. So what I'd like to do now, after giving this overview, is to help you to understand that these 9 days we spend together, we've done it over now for the last 3 years, we're going to have it again this coming summer in 2017. Please do contact your Raja and your national director to learn more how you can sign up. We would encourage everybody to do that. But what I want to do is to show this little short set of clips from a couple of our CPs that indicate the enormous value of EEG demonstration during TM. There's an enormous value of taking this course, not only for growth of our own personal experience, because knowledge is purifying, and when we learn about our brain and how it functions and understand more of the growth of enlightenment and so forth, then that actually stimulates and refines our own brain functioning and our experience. And then if you add on top of that the ability to understand clearly and deeply what EEG patterns of TM are like, and actually do it yourself or show the videotape in the lecture, it has a tremendous and very powerful and enormous value to your ability to function as a TM teacher, as a governor of the Age of Enlightenment. So I'm going to show now this short clip. It's only 3 minutes long. Several people from our last course, just to keep a short version. So if we can go to that clip, please.
Hi. I'd like to express my thanks to Alaric and Cynthia for such a wonderful course. It was very educational, it was challenging, and sometimes frustrating, but Alaric and Cynthia were both there to help us along the way, and mostly with great humor, which really, really helped us learn. I find this course, when I thought about coming to this course, I felt I really needed to, as an essential part of my presentations as a TM teacher in Canada. Thank you, Jai Gurudev.
It has been a wealth of knowledge on top of what you gave us in the past, and now we have much more theoretical knowledge than the one we had in the past, and we can keep on using our machine in Brazil, where for our presentations is just with a short vision, you have all the knowledge. You can give all the knowledge of what TM does on the level of the brain functioning. and the people immediately gets the whole idea in just in a few minutes. So this is just the best presentation you can do in just a very short time, so that the people catches immediately what is good for you, for your business, for your life, for everything. So thank you so much for all the transmission of the knowledge, put on the way from the Vedic perspective also, which enliven all these qualities, beautiful qualities that Maharishi left us. Jai Gurudev.
I just want to say thank you, Alaric. It was a really complete revelation for me to learn about the brain and how to use the BioTrace software on the Nexus for doing live EEG demos. And especially since the reason I learned was for when I travel around the world to different countries, I can demonstrate people's brainwaves of the government officials and the VIP, and that I have found to be the most completely effective, convincing, and dramatic aha experience for people when they see that the brainwaves go from incoherence up to high alpha, 100% coherence. And I feel now I'm more confident in being able to do that around the world. So thank you for that.
And I thank very much Cynthia and Alaric for this wonderful 9 days, not days of Mother Divine, but days of EEG and brain consciousness. It was just wonderful. What to say more? Everyone should do this course. It did bring me a lot of knowledge for me and help me to present TM for prep lecture, for intro lecture, for presentation of the TM in different aspects.
Thank you very much. And I remind everybody that these videos and more in the future will be available at the YouTube Brain Potential Optimize. So the YouTube channel is Brain Potential Optimize. And in our last slide here, we want to encourage everybody to join us this coming summer, 2017, for our next, the 4th annual EEG course. You can contact your Raja and your National Director and learn all how you can enroll. It would be fun to get all back together. We encourage people who have not come to come and enliven their own growth to enlightenment and their own ability to perform as governors of the age of enlightenment. And also to encourage people who have come in the past to take it again. About 20% of the people who take each course are taking it again because we add new material and it's so much fun and there are layers and layers of knowledge. So this is a great joy for us and we like everybody to come together. So I think we have to now sign off, and with that I want to thank Dr. Swan for his kind introduction. I want to thank the Maharishi's Global family for their attention. We want to encourage all the Siddhas and governors to take this EEG course. It's a valuable structure for our own personal enlightenment and to help us bring enlightenment and invincibility to the world. So as we come upon these 9 days of Navaratri and celebration, it'll end up in the day of victory, Vijayadashami. And so we wish everybody great victory, victory of knowledge over ignorance. This EEG course is just another wave of knowledge to help eliminate ignorance in our own personal lives and in the world around us. And through that to enliven layer upon layer of Devata to reveal the full beautiful glory of Rishi within. So with that, we wish everybody a great Vijayadashami, a great year ahead, and see everybody next summer for the 4th annual EEG course. And for that, we say, Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev.
Heaven is descending, descending on the earth. Heaven is descending, Descending, descending on the earth. Heaven is descending, descending on the earth. Heaven on earth, heaven on earth, heaven on earth. Heaven is descending, descending on the earth. Heaven is descending.